It is, of course, week 8 of this VGC 2015 Prismatic Draft League season. It is the last week of the regular season, and that means we are going to be saying goodbye to some of the teams after this week, but quite a few will be advancing to the playoffs next week, and we're about to make the final determinations here of which teams will advance, which ones will go home, so to speak, and exactly what that bracket is going to look like once all the seeding has shaken out. Here, of course, are the standings in Pool A going into Week 8. This is, as always, the exact same table that I showed in Monday's video, so my own result for my Halifax Masquerade men against the Book Club is not reflected here. But if we look at the rest of what's happening in Pool A, remember the top 8 will make the playoffs, and right now 8th place in this table is the Minnesota Marshadows. So, by the way, just by 1 point of differential over the Yosemite Yolteons. So the Yolteons are outside the playoff picture by about as small a margin as is possible heading into this week. I don't know if anyone else could make it. I think the Edmonton Exeggcute maybe could still climb into the playoff picture if things go just right for them. Maybe the Westwego Whiscash as well, but I think they would need a 2-0 win and a Marshadows 2-0 loss, and even then I'm not certain that it would work. But I'd say those are the only others with any chance at all, but otherwise that top 8 is looking pretty close to set, but there is still a lot of room for movement in the seeding, as we have a few teams at 5-2 or 4-3 able to move around, and again, out of the Marshadows, the Yolteons, and the teams immediately around them, somebody is not quite going to make the cut. Also, the East Coast Espurr have guaranteed one of the top 2 seeds in the combined playoff bracket. Once again, the playoff bracket will have both pools thrown in together from the start. But the Espurr have clinched a top 2 seed, and that means they get a first round bye. And it's a similar story in Pool B, where the Ontario Oguris are undefeated through 7 weeks, and they have clinched the other first round bye. And then a lot of the rest of the playoff picture is pretty clear. I think everyone from the Oguris down to the Elegancy have confirmed a spot, but the top 6 teams in Pool B make it to that bracket, and so that 6th spot is still a little bit unclear. As we go into Week 8, it's held by the Toronto Tynamos, but Salt Lake City Toxic and I was going to say and the Glasgow Girafarigs, but I actually don't think the Girafarigs can catch up to the Tynamos because the difference in differential is just too big. So the Salt Lake City Toxic are breathing down their necks. And may yet be able to take that last spot from the Tynamos, but we'll have to see. And again, lots of room for movement in the seeding as well. The trade deadline passed at the end of Week 7, so before we go to the replays, there are also the last few roster moves of the season to look at. Up first, we have a very familiar team in these trade recaps. The Glasgow Girafarig dropping Meowstic and Mega Swampert for Kingdra and Zapdos. So I had forgotten, actually, and I only noticed as I was putting this image together that they actually drafted Kingdra this season, and they dropped it earlier, and then they're picking it back up now. I don't remember how long ago it was. It might have been in the grace period. It has in past seasons normally been a PDL rule that if you drop a Pokemon, you cannot pick that same Pokemon back up again. I honestly don't know whether that rule was in effect this season with the draft format being so different in so many ways. I never got to a position where I wanted to ask, and I don't know if it ever came up with anyone else, so I think this was probably a valid trade, and either way it was approved, so definitely valid one way or another. In any case, what I see here is the Girafarig picking up a strong Pokemon that complements what they already have, building out a really powerful team actually with such varied threats as Latios, Zapdos, Mega Metagross in 2 different weather modes. And in order to make the points math work for Zapdos, they had to go down to a cheaper Swift Swim user. I think Kingdra over Swampert is not so much what this is about. I mean, Mega Swampert, very strong Pokemon. I think they've been happy to have it probably, but Kingdra is still strong enough to put in some quality work in Rain. And they dropped Meowstic, a support Pokemon that I don't think they were really using. At least I don't remember them doing much with it anytime recently. And pick up a whole other powerful Pokemon in Zapdos that adds a layer to their team that they didn't already have. So I think that's what this is. Just get a really strong Pokemon that complements the rest of the team. And the switch to a lower point value Swift Swim user makes the math work. Next, we have a really strange one. Pendragon United asked for and received permission to make a trade with the ghost of the Foggy Fearows. So to be clear, the Fearows coach was involved in this trade, but there's not really any incentive to say no because the Fearows were not really playing anymore. They had forfeited the rest of the season already. But the team still existed in Pool B, and so staff did grant permission for these moves. I also had some trouble untangling this one when it was posted in the Discord because there are some side moves surrounding it, as you can see. But basically, Pendragon United have swapped their Follow Me users, their Fairy-type Follow Me users. They've dropped Togekiss and picked up Clefairy, and they've used the points freed, not dropped it, they've traded Togekiss away for Clefairy, and they've used the points freed up by that to pick up Scraggy, which is, of course, a strong support Pokemon. I'm a little bit surprised that nobody had it, but I guess it's only so strong. But they've gone up from 10 Pokemon on their team to 11, distributing the Togekiss points into 2 different powerful supports. Clefairy, of course, does get the Follow Me. It does have that Fairy typing. It gets some other support moves like Helping Hand, Sing, After You, probably not 100% sure in this generation. And it also gets Friend Guard, so it passively boosts the defenses of its partner while it's sitting on the field, which we've seen pay off pretty well for the East Coast Espurr at times in Pool A. Of course, Clefairy doesn't have all the offensive power that Togekiss does, or all the Serene Grace Cheese power, but I feel like Pendragon United wasn't doing a lot with Togekiss anyway. I think a bunch of their other Pokemon, Gallade, Aegislash, Salamence, Entei, Mamoswine, have been more important carries for them, even Minun and Clang some weeks. So Togekiss was expendable, and they also get Intimidate and Fake Out support from Scraggy with this move. As for the Fearows, I mean, this is basically just paperwork to be compliant with League rules. The Fearows aren't really playing anymore, but in order to make Togekiss fit within their points budget, they dropped Alomomola. I don't think a ton of thought was put into that one. And finally, the very last trade of the season, coming in with less than an hour to go before the deadline. The Ontario Oguris dropped Kangaskhan and picked up Roserade. The Oguris weren't doing a whole lot with Kangaskhan. I think we saw it come to a week at some point, but I don't really remember for sure. But it definitely wasn't a Pokemon that featured very heavily in their lineup so far, and Roserade gives them... I mean, it gives them a Grass type, which they don't have already. They now have a Fire, Water, Grass core with Blaziken and Jellicent. But the Oguris have had a lot of success all season. I mean, they haven't lost yet, spamming mostly the same 5 Pokemon, Mega Gardevoir, Tornadus, Thundurus, Landorus, and Bisharp, with somebody else mixed in here and there. I don't know if they're really looking to shake things up very much. It's possible also that, since we're heading into the playoffs here, right, that they were looking ahead to who would make the playoffs and thinking about some specific matchup when they chose to pick up Roserade. That's something that coaches could be doing that I can't really account for here without doing a lot more work than I'm willing to do. And even then, I'd probably miss some things. So Roserade could be a matchup piece for something specific. Otherwise, it gives them... I mean, yeah, it gives them a Grass type. That's something already by itself. Maybe also like the status pressure that it provides could be valuable when they're running offensive game plans with Landorus and Gardevoir, pivoting those Pokemon around and looking to find openings in the opposing team. Roserade could help them create those openings, maybe, but I don't know. Anyway, that is finally all of the trades for PDL Season 10. Again, the deadline has passed, so there will be no more. And the last note before we get into the replays, there are a few sets not played this week as people... well, I mean, I don't need to say the same thing every time. Other things are going on in people's lives. This is not necessarily the highest priority, nor should it be. But anyway, and of course, a couple teams withdrew already, so we already know about that. The cooler London Vespiquens forfeited the week against the Azure Bay Chatots. The Foggy Fearows forfeited against the Snowpoint Snorunts. And the East Coast Espurr have forfeited against the Sinister Hand. So we won't be seeing those 6 teams this week. A couple of them will be back for playoffs, presumably, since they have qualified. But yeah, those are, of course, scored as 2-0 wins for the Chatots, the Snorunts, and the Sinister Hand. And we'll see how that influences the final standings at the end. But for now, let's go to the replays that we do have. And now all that stands between us and the end of the regular season are 8 more matches. 4 in Pool A, 4 in Pool B, if I've counted correctly. First, we have the Ryan Green Blue Porygon 2s taking on the Edmonton Exeggcute. The Exeggcute have brought a bunch of the usual suspects. Smeargle's here, of course, and Mega Blaziken. Those have been their 2 main carries, if I can call them that, throughout the season. Weavile showing up as an offensive threat repeatedly throughout the season. Meowstic and Golurk means that they can do skill swap, no guard stuff if they want. And then Gliscor's here. I feel like we haven't seen Gliscor in a while. I have no idea what it's going to do into the Hail team, but actually it's not a bad answer to Mega Garchomp, so that's something. The Porygon 2s have brought both of their Megas, Garchomp and Abomasnow are here. Notably, Garchomp has 3 different potential flying immunities next to it. But that can be next to it on the field, so it can spam Earthquake. Togekiss, flying type, guaranteed ground immunity. I think I said flying immunities just now. Obviously, I meant ground immunities. Togekiss is 1. Rotom, Levitate, guaranteed ground immunity. Bronzong, we saw Heatproof last week, but it usually runs Levitate, so honestly, into the Mega Blaziken team, it could be Heatproof again, but if it has Levitate, that's another Earthquake immunity. And then Meowscarada can protect itself with Wide Guard as well, so we could see Mega Garchomp go crazy again here. Although Weavile and Gliscor are pretty good answers to it. But the Porygon 2s have also brought a lot of their other familiar threats. Wash Rotom is a good answer to all of Blaziken, Gliscor, and Golurk. Mega Abomasnow can, of course, hit things very hard, especially with Bronzong setting Trick Room for it. So a lot of offensive pressure put out by the Porygon 2s at preview here, and we'll see what the Exeggcute have cooked up to deal with that. I can't wait to find out. What's going on in the chat? Don't know. Okay. Weavile and Smeargle leading against Bronzong and Togekiss. We see pressure on Weavile. Fake out into Togekiss immediately. And then a Night Slash into Bronzong that one-shots with a crit. Okay. Do I think that crit mattered? Probably, right? Bronzong's pretty bulky. Night Slash does have a boosted crit rate, but yeah, it pays off for the Exeggcute there. Smeargle gets +2 attack off of Moody. Garchomp is here now. Exeggcute coach says crit W in the chat and then starts begging the opponent to make specific plays as they've done at times this season. We'll see what they're trying to do with the Smeargle here. Anyway, Garchomp's here. It'll just switch out for Abomasnow though. The Porygon 2 is bringing both Megas to this game. Smeargle clicks Final Gambit into Abomasnow, doesn't KO. Garchomp has pretty high base HP, so I feel like it was also not going to get knocked out by Final Gambit. Also, I looked at Smeargle's base HP before. It's not very high. I don't know why they're so committed to Final Gambit Smeargle, but it does do a lot of damage to Abomasnow there. It just doesn't get the KO. But now Togekiss is free to click Dazzling Gleam into Golurk, do about half, but then the Citrus Berry puts it nicely back over half. As I guess Weavile switched out to Golurk, and I don't think I mentioned that. Anyway, Blaziken's here now. It'll Mega Evolve and knock out Abomasnow with a Shadow Claw. I guess that's like a mid-ground attack to cover for 1 redirection into Togekiss. You don't want to click a fighting attack in that case. And 2, Garchomp switching in for Abomasnow. You don't want to click a fire attack in that case. I also don't know what they have, right? They don't necessarily have both stabs. But I guess Shadow Claw gets the KO on Abomasnow while also doing respectable-ish neutral damage into either of the other possibilities. So that does make sense. Abomasnow is knocked out here. Togekiss will immediately one-shot Blaziken with an Air Slash, and then take a bunch of damage from Golurk's Stone Edge. Now Weavile comes back in. It's still at full HP, so if it has a Focus Sash, that'll still be intact. Garchomp's here. Weavile looks like it's putting out a ton of pressure to me, but let's see. Icicle Crash connects into Garchomp. Dazzling Gleam from Togekiss doesn't quite knock either of these out. We still don't get to see whether Weavile has a Sash, as it's not even knocked down to that range. Both Weavile and Golurk hold on at low HP, and Golurk gets that last KO with the Ice Punch. So there were the usual shenanigans going on in the chat. Framer King asking the opponent not to click Dazzling Gleam, but it worked out fine anyway. They're talking about Metronome the move, or maybe Metronome the item. I'm not sure which. Oh, okay, telling Togekiss to click Metronome the move. But it didn't do that. I don't know if they even brought it. I'm not sure why they would. But for all that I talked about the Porygon 2s putting out a lot of offensive pressure in this matchup, and for all the shenanigans going on in the chat, the Exeggcute, actually, as far as I can tell, won this one pretty clearly. Unless I'm missing something. I didn't pay a ton of attention to the chat, but it turns out Weavile was actually pretty hard for the Porygon 2s to deal with. It put out a ton of offensive pressure into Pokemon like Garchomp, Bronzong, and Togekiss, all of which came to this game. And the Golurk was tanky enough to basically do the rest. So, pretty solid game, actually, for the Edmonton Exeggcute. I wonder whether we'll see Mienshao to help deal with the Weavile in Game 2. But, yeah, we'll see what adjustments the Porygon 2s have here. Oh no, my morals are kicking in the chat. I probably wasn't supposed to win that. Did I miss something? And did they negotiate some plays that I didn't pick up on or something? Because that looked to me like a pretty clean Exeggcute win in Game 1. Oh, there was the crit on Bronzong. That's true. I forgot about that. Okay, well, anyway. Weavile and Smeargle are leading again against Bronzong, and this time Mienshao is here. Fake Out goes into Bronzong this time, but Mienshao just immediately throws a low kick into Weavile, and we see that it doesn't have a Focus Sash, so it's knocked out. The Exeggcute just left it to take that, and it didn't take it very well. Smeargle gets a defense boost from Moody. Smeargle gets a defense boost from Moody. Low kick goes into Smeargle. It crits. We see the Smeargle has the Focus Sash. Makes sense. So the crit maybe not that important there. And Smeargle connects a Sheer Cold immediately back into Mienshao. So really making up for the low kick crit to the extent that it mattered. As, of course, that Sheer Cold is... that's not no guard Smeargle. There's been no skill swapping here. That's just a raw 30% Sheer Cold. Connects with its target. Knocks out the Mienshao, and the Exeggcute up a game, have a lot of momentum already in Game 2. Golurk will throw a Fire Punch into Bronzong, doesn't do too much. Bronzong manages to set Trick Room here. Smeargle gets an accuracy boost from the Moody. I don't think one-hit KO moves are influenced by accuracy boosts. I don't think that helps Sheer Cold at all, but maybe there's something that it'll help. But now Abomasnow is here with Trick Room up. It'll Mega Evolve. I'm going to check my base speed stats quickly. Abomasnow is lower than Golurk's. It's actually not even that close. Of course, this is the Mega turn, so I should have checked its base form speed, because it won't get its new speed stat this turn. But anyway, we'll see what happens. If it just protects, okay? Bronzong says Gravity. Abomasnow avoids a Fire Punch. We see Destiny Bond on the Smeargle. So that almost would punish Abomasnow if it just went for Blizzard here. But unfortunately, Smeargle drops to hail damage, so they don't have to worry about that. Blaziken's here. It'll Mega Evolve. Why do these guys talk so much? I want to make sure I don't miss anything important, but I don't think I'm going to. Anyway, Blaziken Mega Evolves as the Blizzard takes out Golurk, and Bronzong lands Hypnosis, of course, in the Gravity into Blaziken, putting it to sleep. Speed Boost will also kind of work against Blaziken here in the Trick Room, although Trick Room turns are ticking down already. Blaziken will wake up already, so that's quick. It'll Protect. Avoid a Blizzard. Wait, where did the rest of the Exeggcute Pokemon go? I didn't realize that 3 of them were knocked out. Blaziken's the only one left. And it disappeared quickly. Low Kick, Hail Damage, Blizzard. It does check out, I guess. But Blaziken will... Yeah, it'll Protect here. 1 turn of Trick Room left. Does it go for the double Protect? It does, but it fails. Abomasnow lands a Grass Whistle in the Gravity. So, that's of course less accurate than Hypnosis, but it is boosted by Gravity. Neither one is 100%, I think, but they are connecting so far. And Protect Obama, switch Bronzong, but that is not what happened. And Garchomp needs the kill anyway for stats, as if Garchomp is about to rocket up the KO leaderboard when it was only picked up in Week 7. Okay, anyway. Blaziken will stay asleep this time, as Garchomp will in fact get the KO for stats, taking it out with an Earthquake. Unable to Mega Evolve because Abomasnow already did, but no need for it here. And so the set is all tied up. The Exeggcute had a pretty solid Game 1. I did forget about that crit, but they capitalized on it very nicely. But the Mienshao adjustment made a real difference in Game 2, as that took out the Weavile and almost all of Smeargle by itself. And then the powerful offense from the Porygon 2s when they got the Trick Room up. With the Abomasnow just clicking Blizzard, and okay, they also did the Gravity Sleep stuff. They got to execute their techs this game, and so they won pretty convincingly. And so, yeah, maybe that crit in game 1 kind of was what everything was about so far. But now, one more game, game 3, anything can happen, winner take all. And let's see, we got Blaziken and Smeargle leading this time against Bronzong and Mienshao. Okay, Blaziken Mega Evolves. We see the Fake Out into Mienshao this time, but it has Inner Focus, so it doesn't flinch. Instead, it U-turns out, taking a lot of Smeargle's HP with it, bringing Garchomp in. Blaziken will just immediately throw a Flare Blitz into Bronzong. Oh, Bronzong survives at approximately 1 HP. Let's see if anyone pops up in the chat and says that for me, but yeah, that looks like about 1 HP to me, but it doesn't look like 0 HP, that's for sure. But Bronzong doesn't go for Trick Room, it actually just throws a Gyro Ball at Smeargle. I guess they don't want to mess with the Sheer Cold anymore. They just made sure to get rid of Smeargle as soon as possible. That means no Trick Room up, and Blaziken is stacking those speed boosts, so we'll see what happens from here. Weavile's here. It can pressure the Garchomp, and the Bronzong's under a ton of pressure already, so the position looks pretty promising for the Exeggcute. They have a lot of pressure right now. Let's see what they do with it. Garchomp will Mega Evolve. Heavy Metal Bronzong to cover for Skydrop. I don't know about that one. Okay, Garchomp will Mega Evolve and Protect, avoiding a Dual Chop from Blaziken. This Blaziken has some serious coverage. We've seen Shadow Claw and Dual Chop. And then the other two moves are Flare Blitz and Protect, so it does in fact not have any Fighting Stab. I guess they still clicked Shadow Claw in game 1 to cover for Garchomp switching back in. But yeah, and they couldn't Dual Chop there because if it were redirected into Togekiss, it would do nothing. So I still understand that Shadow Claw click there. I wonder what Shadow Claw is for in this matchup, though. They already have the Flare Blitz to hit Bronzong. But anyway, that is some pretty interesting coverage. Okay, Icicle Crash also goes into the Protect. Bronzong actually then gets time to set Trick Room. I said that they were pressuring Garchomp with the Weavile, and then they could just take the free KO on Bronzong, but they actually doubled into Garchomp there, and so that free KO was just unclaimed. It's just still there on the shelf, and that means Bronzong gets to set Trick Room, which honestly could swing the whole game. Let's see. Weavile switches out to Golurk as Blaziken protects here. Gyro Ball into Golurk doesn't do too much. Golurk's pretty slow as Garchomp sets up a Swords Dance. Hypnosis, no gravity, just raw Hypnosis into Golurk. It connects. They are landing their sleep moves this week, getting into playoff form. And Garchomp will go for an Earthquake. It'll take out both Blaziken and Golurk. It'll not take out Bronzong. It is Levitate Bronzong. I mean, yeah, that did seem more likely. So 2 KOs right there for Mega Garchomp. I made fun of the idea of Garchomp climbing the KO leaderboard when it's only playing a quarter of the season, but it actually has put in a ton of work in that quarter. Garchomp has gotten I don't know how many KOs Garchomp is on pace for if it played a whole season, but it probably would be the KO leader or pretty close. Anyway, Weavile's back. And then it just drops to a Gyro Ball. So, alright, that was pretty straightforward in the end. 4-0 for the Porygon 2s. I do feel like it's a different game if the Exeggcute just take that KO on Bronzong when it was at about 1 HP before Trick Room went up, but they didn't, and so +2 Mega Garchomp under Trick Room just swept. I think the Exeggcute needed a 2-0 to have a chance of making the playoffs, but either way, they will be eliminated here, and it certainly... Thank you, Ryan Green Blue. It certainly has been fun to watch the Smeargle text throughout the season. Of course, the coach of the Exeggcute was given special permission to draft Smeargle under certain specific restrictions when that Pokemon was banned for everyone else, because we knew that they just wanted to do weird stuff with it and not actually try to break the game. And yeah, well, that was an interesting choice in the rules for this season, but it definitely paid off. It was fun to watch, but Bronzong threw off that Gyro Ball, and the Porygon 2s took the win. Next, we move on to what could be a quieter matchup. The Minnesota Marshadows taking on the Grounded Punching Bags. This one has some pretty significant playoff implications, as both of these teams are in playoff spots going into this week, but at the low end. The Marshadows, of course, in the very last spot currently in the playoffs, and the Punching Bags like second or third last in Pool A. And so winning this one would be huge for either team. I think it would pretty much clinch their spot, and losing could be bad news. They're both going to want to not do that. The Marshadows are showing more of their new look with the Charizard gone. We see the Latios, we see the Mega Gyarados, which I don't think has actually made an appearance yet. I think they didn't bring it immediately after they picked it up. Metagross and Conkeldurr, of course, are very familiar faces. I almost missed Mischievous hiding there. I could only see 5 Pokemon, and I was struggling to figure out where the other one was. But Mischievous has put in a lot of work throughout the season, They do have Trick Room options with Mischievous and Conkeldurr, as they often do, but don't often actually use. But those Pokemon have put in a lot of work anyway. But, Latios gives them... Latios is actually very powerful into the Punching Bags. Some of their Pokemon that they've relied on throughout the season have included Infernape, Mega Manectric, Medicham, Samurott, all of which are here right now, as well as Crobat, which is not here. This is the Crobat team, right? I think so. So Latios has a lot of favorable matchups. It just has to avoid being tricked by Zoroark and watch out for, like, any kind of boosted Slurpuff. But the really interesting thing, the Pokemon that most grabs my eye here is actually the Mr. Mime that the Marshadows have brought. Because if I remember right, they brought Mr. Mime in Week 1, and I'm not sure we've seen it again since then. Certainly not very many times. And it's a Pokemon with a wide support move pool that can do all kinds of strange things. So we'll see how it matches up against other Pokemon that can do strange things like Zoroark. Game 1, we get Samurott and Manectric leading against Mr. Mime and Gyarados. Of course, it is, as some people in this league are all too aware, very possible that one of these is Zoroark. I'll try to figure that one out as quickly as I can. Mr. Mime and Gyarados, though, looking forward to it. Who knows what we're going to get from these Pokemon. First, we get a fake out from Mr. Mime into Manectric, confirming that it is the real Manectric, and then we get a nasty plot from Samurott, confirming that it is not Samurott, it's Zoroark. Samurott doesn't get a nasty plot. Nice try. Gyarados will just go for Dragon Dance without Mega Evolving, by the way. Now it'll Mega Evolve. I guess it was safe from Manectric anyway because of the fake out, so yeah, they could afford... I don't know if there's a particular reason they don't Mega Evolve there. But, yeah, they don't have to. Yeah, I don't know if there's a reason. Maybe I'll find out. Anyway, Gyarados and Manectric will both Mega Evolve here. Gyarados Mega Evolving first, notably. Intimidate comes out. It gets rid of the attack boost, but Gyarados just throws a Waterfall into Zoroark, doing a lot of damage and officially revealing the illusion. Before Manectric Volt switches out into Gyarados. That does a lot of damage, more than half. Brings Medicham in. Zoroark Dark Pulse will do a lot of damage to Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime showing a Salac Berry, so it'll get speed boosted now that it's at low HP, at least as long as it remains on the field. And that's, well, it's not significant this turn because it doesn't kick in yet. This is the last action of the turn anyway, but Mr. Mime knocks out Zoroark and does a lot of damage to Medicham with a Dazzling Gleam. Medicham doesn't take another of those, and Mr. Mime with that speed boost could put out a lot more pressure with another Dazzling Gleam next turn. Zoroark is gone. Manectric is back. Gyarados is now at -1 attack. A little bit awkward for that Pokemon. Mr. Mime will not actually get the chance to put out pressure as it drops to a Medicham Bullet Punch. So good tech there on the Medicham. Using that super effective priority into Mr. Mime. Gyarados just waterfalls the Manectric. Doesn't do a whole lot at -1. Another Volt Switch knocks it out. Brings Samurott back in. Marshadows already down to their last 2 Pokemon this game, which are Metagross and Latios. We'll see what they can do with those. First, a Bullet Punch from Medicham into Latios. The fact that Medicham went for Bullet Punch again tells me one of 2 things. Either it's choiced or it thinks that that's its only chance to do something before it's knocked out here. But either way, it doesn't do a ton to Latios. I mean, it did like 30%. That's not bad, but it's not exactly amazing damage. Especially when Latios puts out a lot of pressure into Manectric and probably Samurott, depending on some of the details of its set. Like maybe Samurott can threaten it with Ice Beam or something, but we'll see. Anyway. First, we get Earthquake from Metagross. Next to Latios with Levitate, so it won't hit the partner, but it will knock out Medicham. Only chips Swampert a little bit. Swampert takes a bunch more damage from a Latios Psychic. We see Icy Wind. It misses both targets. That's pretty unfortunate for the Punching Bags. Metagross, of course, would not take much damage or get speed dropped because of Clear Body, so missing Metagross is not a big deal, but missing Latios seems like a pretty big deal, as that would do super effective damage. It's not very powerful, but it's non-negligible damage, and probably more importantly, we get the speed drop. Although Mega Manectric is probably faster than Latios anyway. Manectric is back. Intimidate also not a problem for Metagross because of Clear Body. Latios will protect here. Manectric will just throw a Flamethrower into Metagross. Does a lot of damage, but it doesn't get the KO. And Metagross Earthquake knocks out Manectric. Samurott survives at approximately 1 HP. Can Samurott do something? I think it just loses to Latios even if it knocks out Metagross here, but let's see. It goes for Scald into Latios, hits the Protect. It shows Leftovers, which probably showed that already and I just didn't notice. And then it drops to a Metagross Earthquake. Metagross clicked the same move every turn, and it was going before Latios, so I'm slow on the uptake here, but it's got to be Scarf Metagross, right? And that Scarf Earthquake put in a lot of work against 4 grounded Pokemon. The grounded punching bag's kind of living up to their name as they didn't bring Crobat this week. And of course, their Mega is weak to ground, and Metagross can't be intimidated by it. Infernape also weak to ground. But yeah, we'll see what adjustments they have. What do I think happened here? The Marshadows mostly just attacked with stuff. But yeah, the fast Earthquake from Metagross put in a lot of work. Mr. Mime Dazzling Gleam had one big turn the one time it was used. They did a good job of piling up damage with their early 2 Pokemon, letting those get knocked out and then closing it out with Metagross. That's pretty much what happened here. So let's see if the punching bags have adjustments for that in Game 2. Medicham leading with Samurott. Either one could be Zoroark against Mr. Mime and Latios. We see Medicham switch out for Slurpuff. We see Mr. Mime going for Side Fling into its partner. So is that going to activate a weakness policy and maybe something else? Latios takes very little damage from that. Oh, yeah, the Solic Berry. Right, we know Mr. Mime's item. It's a Solic Berry. And it is exactly as I said. So Fling is a Dark-type attack, so Latios is weak to it. Mr. Mime, I thought Solic Berry Mr. Mime looked kind of odd. It's not really meant to use it itself. It's not bad if Mr. Mime uses it itself. That's part of the power of the set, no doubt, because fast Fairy-type clicking Dazzling Gleam is often going to be pretty good. But the real goal here is Solic Berry gets the speed boosting effect. You fling it into your partner, it boosts their speed. And then because Latios has the weakness policy and Fling is Dark-type, it also gets the weakness policy attack and special attack boost. That's a great tech. I never saw that coming when they picked Latios up. And then it goes for Shadow Ball into what was Medicham. So that'll also hit Slurpuff pretty hard. It doesn't quite KO. Slurpuff holds on, but it does take a lot of damage. Fairy type switched in, but Latios didn't go for Dragon attacks. That's fine. Slurpuff shows a Citrus Berry, which will heal it a little bit. It still is in range of another Shadow Ball very easily, but it also activate Unburden off of that. +2 Slurpuff, +1 Latios. Latios is probably still... I don't know math. Latios is probably still faster, that's what I'm going to say. But maybe not after this Icy Wind from Samurott. Drops it back to neutral speed. Alright, so great tech from the Marshadows. I love this Latios Mr. Mime combination, but the punching bags have responded pretty well with the Unburdened Slurpuff and the Icy Wind Samurott. And let's see how these teams answer each other the rest of the way. Latios protects, Slurpuff just throws a Play Rough into it, but it hits Protect. Mr. Mime takes a Samurott Scald perfectly well, and there's the answer to Slurpuff. They just protect the Latios, and Mr. Mime clicks Psychic and knocks Slurpuff out. So Mr. Mime knows Fake Out, Psychic, Dazzling Gleam, and Fling. Yeah, so it's meant to activate Latios and then just click attacks, or if it uses the Solic Berry itself, again, it can hit reasonably hard with that speed boost. Medicham's here now. Mr. Mime will switch out to Mischievous. Latios just one-shots Samurott with a Psychic as Medicham misses Rock Slide into Latios. Another big miss for the punching bags. We see Infernape as their last Pokemon this game. There's no Zoroark. Latios protects around a Fire Punch. Another Rock Slide comes out. Mischievous will not flinch. It will paralyze Infernape with a Thunder Wave. Latios then free to knock out Medicham with a Shadow Ball. We see Mischievous go for Psych Up and copy the offensive boost on Latios. It doesn't get a speed boost, of course, because Latios already lost that, but the punching bag's already down to just Infernape, and it's paralyzed, and they're facing +2 Latios and +2 Mischievous. Are the Marshadows going to manipulate this so that Mischievous gets the last KO? I think that would be fitting with all the work that Mischievous has put in throughout the season, but let's see. Latios Shadow Balls Infernape. Infernape holds on at low HP, and the Shadow Ball double up from the Mischievous does give Mischievous that last KO. The Marshadows kept it simple in Game 1. They just did offense basically and won the game largely with the Metagross, and then in Game 2 they unveiled a crazy tech that worked like a charm and just swept the punching bags away. And that will shore up the Marshadows playoff position and make things a bit shakier for the punching bags, but we'll see how things shake out in the end. Next we have the Denver Dewotts taking on the Westwego Whiscash. The Dewotts have brought a very familiar group. There's no Heatran this week, but they've brought their Mega Gardevoir with Noivern Tailwind support. They brought the Tyranitar Excadrill Sand Duo. Tyranitar able to boost Excadrill's speed, most likely, unless they're running Sand Force, and then they boost his power instead. But either way, the Sandstorm boosts Excadrill. Tyranitar also a good beneficiary of the Tailwind because it has that powerful Stab Rock Slide. And then there's no Heatran, but they do still have a defensive duo of Heat Rotom and Amoonguss that can be pretty difficult for the opponent to deal with. On the Whiscash side, there's no sign of the Gastrodon that gave me trouble last week, but the Ludicolo that gave me trouble last week is here. They brought two of their physical offense trio, Mega Metagross and Landorus. They brought Moltres, which is interesting. Moltres seems kind of hard-pressed to do very much in this matchup. It's not good into Heatran, which isn't here, but it could easily have been. It's also not very good into Rotom or Tyranitar. If it's outsped by Excadrill, that's a problem too, but I guess in some circumstances it's an offensive threat into Excadrill. It's definitely a threat into Amoonguss. It's a fairy resist that can throw out Gardevoir. So I guess it does bring enough here, but I wonder how much we'll actually see it do. And then Porygon 2 and Illumise give them a bunch of interesting support options, but let's see. Illumise leads with Ludicolo against Noivern and Rotom. Noivern's Frisk shows us Focus Sash, Illumise, and Leftovers Ludicolo, which is interesting. Okay. It's Fake Out into Noivern immediately, and then Illumise just sets Tailwind. Noivern will flinch, and Rotom will Volt Switch out, doing about a third to Illumise and bringing Tyranitar in. But it's the it's the opponent that has Tailwind up here. The Dewotts do not. Tyranitar's here. Sand is up. Illumise, I have a feeling I know what it's going to do, but we'll see. First, Noivern will switch out to Rotom. And I guessed wrong. I thought Illumise would click Rain Dance, but instead it clicks Thunder Wave into Tyranitar. This is Generation 6. Prankster moves do work on Dark types. They took that away in Generation 7, so Tyranitar will be paralyzed here. Ludicolo just throws an Ice Beam at the Noivern slot, so Rotom switches in very nicely on that. But Tyranitar is fully paralyzed. Unfortunate immediately for the Dewotts. As Illumise clicks Rain Dance now. Okay, so they do have it. Rotom just gets knocked out by a Ludicolo Scald. Tyranitar fully paralyzed again. Oh no. Excadrill's here, but there's no sand. They have Noivern in the back, so they can pivot Tyranitar out, but yeah, what cost? Illumise will switch out for Landorus. It'll intimidate both of these. They leave Excadrill to just get knocked out by Scald. Tyranitar finally gets to move for the first time in this game, I think. Lands a Crunch into Ludicolo, does about half. Ludicolo already starting to recover that off. Noivern's here. We see Lumberry on the Landorus. Noivern drops to an Ice Beam. Tyranitar takes a Rock Slide from Landorus. Takes it pretty well, but that's now a flinch chance on top of the paralysis. Tyranitar does get to move, though. It hits Landorus with an Ice Punch, but with Tyranitar -1 attack, Landorus survives at approximately 1 HP. And Ludicolo can probably just get the KO now, right? Not quite. Tyranitar is so bulky, it takes the Scald, but then it drops to a Landorus U-turn, so... I don't know what there is to say about that one. I wasn't sure what the Ludicolo was going to do in this matchup. When I saw it lead next to Illumise, I started to figure it out. But yeah, they just set Tailwind, set Rain, and swept. And so we'll see what the Dewotts have in Game 2. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Amoonguss this game. And that definitely could slow the Ludicolo down, you would think, although it is weak to that Ice Beam, but let's see. The Ludicolo capitalized pretty well on water and ice coverage, sweeping through a lot of this team, which is... I'm kind of only noticing now, definitely a weakness that the Dewotts have to an extent in their draft. It's Gardevoir. They lead Gardevoir and Rotom this time against Ludicolo and Illumise. Gardevoir will Mega Evolve. The Fake Out from Ludicolo goes into Rotom. Thunder Wave into Gardevoir. Rotom flinches. Gardevoir says Trick Room. Okay, so... The opponent, the Whiscash brought the same speed control as last game, so it looks like they want to play a Tailwind mode. Gardevoir's paralyzed, slowed by that. So setting Trick Room, the Trick Room that I honestly didn't see coming, although I probably should see Gardevoir Trick Room coming by this point in the season, but yeah, it'll benefit from being slowed by the paralysis. If it gets to move, Tyranitar had trouble with the getting to move part last game, but we'll see about Gardevoir. But the paralysis could be beneficial under Trick Room. Anyway. Oh, never mind. Encore into Gardevoir. It's forced to reverse its own Trick Room. Illumise has, what, Tailwind, Thunderwave, Encore, Rain Dance, full support set. I might not have guessed that they would have Encore by now if I were playing them, so good tech there. Yeah, Gardevoir was immediately forced to reverse the Trick Room. Ludicolo gets to throw a Scald into Rotom for a lot of damage, doesn't quite KO outside of Rain. Rotom Volt Switch, again doing about a third to Illumise, getting Amoonguss in. Thunderwave into Amoonguss, why not, I guess. There's the chance for a full para, but Amoonguss takes the Ice Beam pretty well. And by the way, Gardevoir stayed in, so it's looking to just set the Trick Room right back up, and it will get to do that. Amoonguss is fully paralyzed. Trick Room goes back up. Now Gardevoir switches out. Makes sense. They stuck with it, got the Trick Room back. Tyranitar comes in here, but now the sand is up, and Illumise, as soon as Tyranitar is on the field, Illumise can always click Rain Dance, and Tyranitar has difficulty changing the weather back. So in a way, Tyranitar being on the field when Illumise is still around kind of inherently favors the Whiscash. But let's see what the Dewotts have up their sleeve this time. Ludicolo will switch out to Landorus first. It'll intimidate Tyranitar. Thunderwave into Tyranitar, so that's paralyzed too. Everything on the Dewotts is paralyzed now except Rotom, which is immune to Thunderwave. We do see a Spore into Illumise, so Illumise won't be able to click Rain Dance for at least another turn. Prioritize the Thunderwave into Tyranitar instead. And, of course, it is pretty vulnerable to a Rock Slide now, if Tyranitar gets to move. Illumise, yeah, it's taking a nap. Landorus will take a nap now. Spore goes into Landorus, but we know it has the Lumberry because we saw the Frisk in Game 1, so it wakes up immediately. Tyranitar Rock Slide does KO Illumise, so no more Rain Dance, probably, and Landorus will flinch. The Whiscash getting a bit of a taste of their own medicine there with the Rock Slide flinch after all those full paras that the Dewotts have had to deal with, as well as the Rock Slide gambling their opponent has done against them. Metagross is here now. It'll Mega Evolve and just protect. We're still trying to get through the Trick Room. Metagross avoids a Spore. Tyranitar is fully paralyzed for, I think, the third time in this set. Metagross protecting also means it gets to avoid its partner's Earthquake. Tyranitar takes a bunch of damage. Amoonguss survives at low HP. And then eats a Citrus Berry. And Bullet Punch takes out Amoonguss. So, Ice Punch back from Tyranitar takes out Landorus even at -1. But the Whiscash did enough there to mitigate the Spore, I would think. Illumise took a nap and it fainted, but yeah, between Metagross protecting at just the right time and Landorus having the Lumberry, of course Landorus could have been made to fall asleep this time, and then that would punish the Metagross protect, but the Dewotts didn't make that read. I don't know that I would have either. I'm just saying it's a thing that could have happened, not that they should have done that. And the Whiscash get to capitalize and knock out the Amoonguss, and now Ludicolo will have to come back in. Trick Room is over. Ludicolo looks like a giant threat. Gardevoir is back. It could try to set Trick Room again. It'll protect first. Actually, the problem with Gardevoir trying to set Trick Room is it's so vulnerable to Metagross Iron Head. Ludicolo, not bothering with Fake Out, just goes for a Scald into Tyranitar. Tyranitar survives at something that looks pretty close to 1 HP. It gets to move. It's breaking through the paralysis this game, mostly. Throws a Crunch into Metagross. Does about half. But now Gardevoir is still vulnerable. Goes for double protect. Doesn't get it. Drops to an Iron Head. Ludicolo can just knock out Tyranitar. And all that's left is Rotom. It's at low HP. It drops to a Bullet Punch. No, it doesn't. It survives a Bullet Punch. It actually knocks out Metagross with an Overheat, but then it drops to Ludicolo Scald. Rotom survived that Bullet Punch at approximately... Okay, you know. Yeah, so the Dewotts just ran out of gas here. It was... They put up more of a fight than they did in Game 1, but their whole team getting paralyzed in the Trick Room ending just put them too far behind in front of the pressure put out by Mega Metagross. And so a pretty convincing 2-0 win there by the Whiscash. And I don't know what that means exactly for the Dewotts, but it'll definitely affect them in the playoff seeding. Next we have the Nothing Burger taking on the Yosemite Yolteons. This is the very last regular season set in Pool A. The Nothing Burger have brought all the usual side characters, except Machamp isn't here. But Bayonet, Shuckle, Whimsicott, Greninja, Escavalier all are. They've mixed in the Trapinch this time. And on the Jolteon side, the Jolteons, I never know how to describe the Jolteons lineup. And this is actually true for like every team this coach drafts in every PDL season. I never know exactly how to describe it, except that it's just a solid, well-rounded mix of Pokemon. But you know what these Pokemon do by now. Mega Gengar traps and special attacks things. Raichu is a menace with Fake Out and Endeavor. Breloom is a menace with Spore and Mach Punch. Gardevoir, Hydreigon, and Gyarados all put out offensive pressure too. And the Nothing Burger brought a bunch of weird stuff. We'll see if it pays off for them this time. Gengar and Raichu leading against Escavalier and Trapinch. Gengar will switch out. Of course, it is able to do that against Arena Trap for two reasons. One, it still has Levitate in this generation, and two, it's a ghost type, so it can't be trapped anyway. Gyarados comes in. It intimidates both of these physical attackers. Trapinch just protects as Raichu Volt switches out against Escavalier, getting out of the Arena Trap itself and bringing Hydreigon in. These two Pokemon both not trapped because one's a flying type and the other is Levitate, although I think they're fine with being here in this position anyway. Escavalier throws a Drill Run into the Hydreigon slot, that ground immunity also paying off into that attack. If that had been a Mega Horn, Hydreigon would probably just fold, but it takes nothing from Drill Run. And now it's free to Flamethrower the Escavalier. There's no Occa Berry. Escavalier just faints. Trapinch is still here. It gets one-shot by a Waterfall. Now it's just Greninja and Bayonet for the Nothing Burger. We see Lumberry, Gyarados, and Life Orb Hydreigon. I guess we saw Life Orb Hydreigon already. Someday I'll pay consistent attention to those HP modifying items and notice them right away. Lumberry, Gyarados, interesting, of course, because if Bayonet wants to throw a Will-O-Wisp or Thunder Wave at it, it will be cured the first time. So you can't just burn it as a solution. Bayonet will Mega Evolve here. Hydreigon protects, so does Gyarados. Scouting what the opponent's doing, I'm sure. Bayonet just goes for its own protect. Greninja shows Ice Punch into Hydreigon. And now Bayonet goes for Destiny Bond. It goes first, of course, because it has Prankster, so it can take an opponent with it here, but that might be too little too late for the Nothing Burger in this game, as the Yolteons are up 4-2, Pokemon to 2 right now. If they trade Bayonet for something else, I'm pretty sure the Yolteons take that every time, and then I don't know how Greninja can win the game from there. But let's see. Greninja goes for Rock Slide. Does a lot of damage to Gyarados, not as much to Hydreigon. Life Orb on the Greninja. But Greninja changing from an Ice type to a Rock type with Protean there does mean that it nicely takes a Flamethrower from Hydreigon. So that's something pretty significant for Greninja. Gyarados Crunch does not get the KO on Bayonet. Again, I think the Yolteons would happily take that trade, but they're not actually getting it here. They'll switch Gyarados out to Raichu. Hydreigon just protects. Bayonet goes for a Shadow Sneak into the Gyarados slot. Doesn't do much to Raichu. As Greninja goes for the Ice Punch again into Hydreigon's protect. Now Greninja gets faked out. Another Shadow Sneak still doesn't KO the Raichu, and Hydreigon is free to knock out Greninja with a Dragon Pulse crit that I'm sure doesn't matter. And that just leaves Bayonet. Bayonet will take out Raichu with a Shadow Sneak, but then it'll drop to a Dragon Pulse. And you know, the Nothing Burger with those last two Pokemon were able to slow down the Yolteons' momentum to an extent, but in the end, the Yolteons still broke through and pretty convincingly swept here. But the Greninja looked at some points like it could be an offensive threat with the right positioning. We saw Protect, Destiny Bond, and Shadow Sneak from the Bayonet, so I don't know what its last move is. I hope it's something good. Shadow Sneak has, I think, repeatedly not been really enough damage for Mega Bayonet, but with that Prankster, there's definitely a temptation to run like Will-O-Wisp or something, and they know that the Lumberry Gyarados won't be burned at least the first time, so maybe that's why we didn't see it. But the Greninja looked like it could put in work, so maybe it will in Game 2. Yolteons lead with Hydreigon and Raichu against, this time, Whimsicott and Shuckle. Shuckle's here. They changed his nickname. Can't say I'm disappointed by that. We see a Fake Out into Whimsicott, and then a Flamethrower just knocks it out, so we don't get to see anything about what Whimsicott does in this game. Shuckle, though, just going straight for Shell Smash, of all things. Shuckle, of course, some of the very highest defensive stats in the whole game, some of the very lowest offensive stats in the whole game, including speed. It's still going to be slow. It's still going to be weak. Oh, it's Contrary Shuckle. Wait, what am I? Every single week, I forget that Shuckle has Contrary. Every time. And I'm always surprised. This is how much I've thought about Shuckle late, I guess, in recent years. Of course, it's not in Scarlet and Violet. Every single time they do a Contrary strat with Shuckle, and I forget that it has Contrary, and I'm surprised once again. I got so worked up there that I accidentally bumped my chair into the desk. I don't know if that was audible for you. Shuckle is boosting both of its defenses with Shell Smash while lowering the stats that it doesn't care about, although maybe there's some really niche way that becoming slower actually benefits it. But either way, this is functionally like a cosmic power for Shuckle for the most part, so that's kind of neat, actually. Escavalier will also be here. Nuzzle into Shuckle. Let's see just how slow this Shuckle can get, I guess. One of the lowest base speed stats in the game. It's made itself -1 speed, and now it's paralyzed. Flamethrower just deletes the Scavalier, so Shuckle might have to find a way to solo this game. Not off to a great start as it's fully paralyzed this turn. And there's no Greninja in this game. The Nothing Burger's last Pokemon is Bayonet, which does not want to be facing Hydreigon right now, I think. We see that it's Assault Vest Raichu. I don't think we'd seen that yet. Bayonet Mega evolves. Raichu Volt switches out against Shuckle. It does very little damage. Shuckle is extremely tanky. So, I mean, maybe it can still do something here if it could break through the paralysis. Raichu will bring in Gyarados, though, which is an offensive threat into Shuckle, of course. It'll also intimidate Bayonet. Bayonet does avoid a Dark Pulse with the Protect. Shuckle just going for Rock Slide. Of course, it lowered its attack, so that's a bit awkward for it. Gyarados, a flying type, was... well, I guess Shuckle did get an attack boost from the Intimidate, so it's only at -1 attack now. Or, I don't know why I put the emphasis there. It's only at -1 attack now instead of -2. But even so, Gyarados, flying type, just tickled the tiniest bit by that Rock Slide. Bayonet will Shadow Sneak Gyarados. Again, not enough damage. Takes a bunch from a Dragon Pulse, and Gyarados is just free to Dragon Dance. There's nothing really threatening it. Shuckle showing Power Split, actually. Showing now, I mean, the Rock Slide is still awkward, but showing actually how it benefits from lowering its own stats as it... we've seen Guard Split Shuckle in Pool B, of course. Power Split Shuckle will average its terrible offensive stats with Gyarados. So Gyarados not going to get to make good use of that Dragon Dance, and maybe not quite the offensive threat into Shuckle that it looked like it would be. Bayonet's still in trouble. A little Destiny Bond here. Gyarados Waterfalls Shuckle. That actually still does quite a bit. I've talked up the Shuckle's bulk so much, and it's a +1 defense. I really would have hoped it would take less than that. That did more than a third. Hydreigon will knock out Bayonet. Again, I think the Yolteons are fine with this trade. They do lose Hydreigon to the Destiny Bond, but all that remains for the Nothing Burger is Shuckle. It's going back to boosting itself with that Shell Smash, but it'll get faked out here for 0 to 2% of its HP. That might have done 0 damage. We can't quite be sure. Science can't figure out whether that fake out did any damage or not. And then a Waterfall chips it some more. And another Waterfall. Shuckle survives at approximately 1 HP, but Raichu gets the KO with Thunderbolt. That one did damage. Science can figure that one out. That was probably one of the more fun Shuckle techs we've seen this season, and I've appreciated the Nothing Burger's creativity with Shuckle all throughout the season. Unfortunately, while Shuckle has some great strengths, it also has some great weaknesses, and it's not really a Pokemon that can carry a set like that. But they certainly tried, and I respect it. And the Yosemite Yolteons with a 2-0 win. Remember, this was the 9th place team in Pool A going into this week, but just barely 9th place, outside of the playoff picture by 1 point of differential. Depending on how everything else is shaken out, a 2-0 win here could be very good news for them. And now, of course, we jump to Pool B, and it's time to see... the Salt Lake City Toxic take on the Glasgow Girafarig. And I'm going to admit to something that I could have taken to my grave that I have no reason at all to admit to you, but I'm just good and transparent like that. All season, I meant to actually do Pool B first this week, because doing Pool A first every single time makes sense because it's my pool, but it means I'm tired when I get to Pool B, and I think it affects the commentary they get. And so in the interest of fairness, I decided weeks ago that I would do Pool B first in Week 8, and I'm bringing that up now because I just remembered it. I forgot. I got through Pool A, and then I remembered that I meant to do B first. There was no need for me to tell you that. Feel free to forget it. Pool B time. Salt Lake City Toxic versus Glasgow Girafarig. Apologies to, like all of Pool B, just generally. The Girafarig bringing their new Zapdos. Not bringing Kingdra, which suggests to me that, Zapdos was definitely the centerpiece of that roster move, especially as, if I remember the standings right, I think the Girafarig are mathematically eliminated already. Maybe they're not, but it's really close. But either way, not bringing Kingdra in crunch time. Instead, we see it's Mega Metagross, right? Zapdos, Latios, Serperior, bunch of offensive threats. Vivian, Aurorus, able to, I believe it gets Snow Warning, so able to set up the Hail, spam that Blizzard. I don't know what to say about this team except that they have a lot of offensive threats. And on the Toxic side, the Salt Lake City Toxic, out of a playoff spot, but with a very real chance to get in. They brought Chansey Shuckle. They brought Linoon, which can set up a Belly Drum and spam Extreme Speed with Tangela giving it Rage Powder cover. They brought Mega Sableye to enable the Chansey Shuckle stuff further. They brought Riolu for whatever that does in this generation. The only thing I can think of usually when I see a Riolu is coaching, but coaching is years away from existing. This is VGC 2015, and coaching was invented in, I think, like 2020 or 2021. So I don't know what Riolu does. But we know the basic game plans for the Toxic, and the basic game plan for the Girafarig looks like a bunch of offense. Let's see. Vivillon leading with Metagross against Linoone and Tangela, so that's what mode the Toxic are going with here. Metagross will Mega Evolve. Rage Powder from Tangela, Belly Drum from Linoone. There's the Citrus Berry. Metagross Ice Punch does a bunch of damage to Tangela, but it doesn't KO, and we see a Rocky Helmet on the Tangela, and because the Ice Punch doesn't KO, Tangela also redirects the Sleep Powder from Vivillon. Vivillon, of course, not a grass type, so not immune to Rage Powder, but Tangela is a grass type, so it is immune to Sleep Powder, so the Sleep Powder does nothing. Would have been a great first turn for the Girafarig if Metagross had one-shot Tangela, but Tangela, this is not even Eviolite Tangela. I was going to say it's bulky with an Eviolite, but it's Helmet Tangela, it's not Eviolite, but it's still a pretty bulky Pokemon, and that non-stab Ice Punch was just not up to the job. I guess with a crit it would have worked. Linoone will Protect here, avoiding an Iron Head. Vivillon sets Tailwind. Linoone doesn't care too much about that with Extreme Speed, but it could be beneficial for some other parts of the matchup. Tangela playing it safe here, going for Sleep Powder, putting the Metagross to sleep, so Linoone doesn't have to worry about that Pokemon immediately. Now it'll Rage Powder again. Metagross is asleep, of course. Tangela redirects another Sleep Powder. The Girafarig might have wanted to go for an attack there with Vivillon if they have one. But instead, Vivillon, once again, not really accomplishing anything this turn, as Linoone is free to click a Shadow Claw into Metagross, and it KOs. Aurorus here now, it doesn't have Snow Warning, so it has Refrigerate, so it can click like Ice-type Hyper Beam if it wants, or I think it gets Hyper Voice, it can click Ice-type Hyper Voice. That might be more realistic than Hyper Beam. But first, Linoone will Extreme Speed Vivillon, knock it out, no Focus Sash. Another Rage Powder from Tangela, but Aurora's showing Haze. Okay. I didn't know it got that. Aurorus is another Pokemon I haven't thought about in a while, but Linoone's Belly Drum boost is now gone. It can go for another Belly Drum if it wants, but we'll see if it's worth it. But Linoone did get 2 KOs already, so that's pretty successful. Latios is here. Linoone unboosted, Aurorus and Latios putting out pressure. I mean, there's still ways you'd think for the Girafarig to get back into this game, but let's see. Linoone will Protect here. So will Tangela, scouting what the opponent does. Ice Beam from Latios into Tangela, and it is Hyper Voice from Aurorus. That is Ice-type Hyper Voice because of the Refrigerate. Latios says Tailwind. They brought 2 Tailwind users. But wow, even... Oh! It's Gen 8. It's non-dynamic... Gen 6. It's Gen 6. It's non-dynamic speed, which was invented in Gen 8. I was about to be surprised that Latios outsped Aurorus while the opponent had Tailwind up. Did I mess this up in another set? There was another speed interaction that puzzled me. Well, anyway, Aurorus doesn't benefit from the Tailwind in the same turn that the Tailwind is used because it's not dynamic speed, so Linoone outspeeds Aurorus because it just does. So it gets a Shadow Claw into Latios. It's unboosted. It doesn't do too much damage, but okay, Tangela also gets to outspeed Aurorus. What is Aurorus' base speed? It is a slow Pokemon, actually just a tiny bit slower naturally than Tangela. So Aurorus really really not benefiting, really harmed by the non-dynamic speed there. As both of these outspeed it, and it takes a nap before it can take advantage of the Tailwind to spam that Hyper Voice. I'm half expecting a chat message about that to pop up. But anyway, Tangela will Rage Powder, tank the Ice Beam for Linoone. Linoone is going for that second Belly Drum, so it's a low HP, but it's back at +4. Aurora stays asleep. Chansey's here. Linoone will knock out Latios with one of the least necessary crits I've ever seen in this league, and I feel like after this many seasons that's saying something. Aurora stays asleep. That is, I think, maximum sleep turns. Chansey adding insult to injury, just going for that minimize. Aurorus will take like 50% from a Linoone Shadow Claw. It'll wake up and click Haze. It'll get rid of Linoone's attack boost and Chansey's evasiveness boost, but I don't know how Aurorus beats Chansey. Let's see. Chansey just clicking that minimize again. Tailwind ends. Shadow Claw tickles Aurorus a little bit. Yeah, Linoone's a lot less scary without its boosts. It'll get knocked out by Hyper Voice here. The Hyper Voice does hit Chansey, but it does so little damage even when it connects, and we see a Life Orb on the Aurorus. This is just doomed for Aurorus. It'll knock itself out with the Life Orb before it knocks Chansey out, even if it hits through Well, it has to hit through Minimize to take the Life Orb damage, but yeah, that's just what's going to happen. Chansey actually might be better off not clicking Minimize here. Like, it's dragging the game out more if it actually dodges attacks. And of course, Shuckle's the last Pokemon for the Toxic. Chansey's still just spamming that Minimize. Aurorus will miss a Hyper Voice into Chansey, but it'll hit Shuckle, so it still takes Life Orb chip off of that. So I guess as long as there's another Hyper Voice target, Chansey does still sort of benefit from the Minimize, because it can stick around even longer. But I say sort of because Aurorus never wins this anyway. It doesn't really matter. Shuckle will throw a Struggle Bug at Aurorus, lower its special attack for good measure. Shuckle will protect while Chansey goes for Combine. They're just dragging it out at this point. But Aurorus hits through the Minimize, and that means it knocks itself out with its Life Orb. Which for stat keeping purposes means Aurorus gets that KO, so Shuckle missed a chance to boost his stats there. Or I guess Shuckle wouldn't have gotten that anyway because Aurorus is faster. If Chansey has an attack, it might have missed a chance. Anyway, so that was pretty dominant for the Toxic. Let's see if they can do it again in Game 2. And let's see what kind of mode they bring this time. Zapdos finally appearing on the field next to Superior against Chansey and Sableye. Oh boy, here we go. Taunt into Zapdos. Taunt from Superior back into Chansey. Okay, that's going to shake things up. Chansey won't be able to just spam that Minimize now. Zapdos does have a Sprite for me, and that Zapdos Sprite just used Skydrop on Sableye. We haven't seen Skydrop yet this week, have we? But Chansey's taunted, so the Toxic will switch it out for Shuckle. Superior Leaf Storm does decent damage to Shuckle, and that damage will add up quickly with Superior getting that contrary special attack boost. Sableye dropped out of the sky, switched out to Tangela. Shuckle just protecting here. Of course, Chansey can't redirect, or Tangela can't redirect to the Leaf Storm because Superior is a Grass type. Shuckle avoiding Leaf Storm here. The Girafarig putting out a lot more pressure in the early game so far than they did in Game 1. I guess the Linoon not being here to put pressure back is making a pretty big difference. Tangela will take a Thunderbolt pretty nicely there. Taunt over on Zapdos. Tangela switches out to Chansey. Shuckle, if it had taken that Leaf Storm, could have gone for a Guard Split into Chansey right there, but it is knocked out. Honestly, I thought Shuckle would probably survive that. I shouldn't have. The first one did more than a third, and then it's +2, so of course it would do a little bit more than 2/3. I don't know why I would underestimate Superior. That doesn't seem like me. Of course it got the KO on Shuckle there. Chansey gets Skydropped. Sableye's back. I don't know how the Toxic can pull this one back. I mean, their Pokemon are just getting swept aside. Sableye gets knocked out by a Leaf Storm, and now Superior is at +6. Chansey does get a Minimize here, so I guess that can win the game. But if they have Aurorus in the back, they'd have to get rid of the boosts on their Superior. Well, we'll see how they play this. Tangela's here first. Zapdos switches out to Metagross. Tangela protects. But the Leaf Storm goes into Chansey and does a lot of damage at +6. That's good damage into a Chansey. Rage Powder, of course it does not redirect Superior's attack, but Superior goes for the Tangela anyway and just one-shots it with Leaf Storm. And this is definitely the best Superior game we've seen all season. This is why you keep Superior on the team. That Pokemon is so good. One could say it's one of the best Pokemon ever. I can't believe Wolfglick didn't put it in the top 100 even. He actually put it way higher than I expected, but I would put it higher than he did. Metagross connects with an Ice Punch, but Chansey survives. Gets some recovery with Soft Boiled, but it takes so much from that Leaf Storm. Superior just needs to connect, and Metagross will Mega Evolve here. Leaf Storm does miss, so does Iron Head. Chansey's stacking up those evasiveness boosts. But yeah, Superior just needed a Leaf Storm to connect at this point, and after the Toxic pretty well locked down Game 1, I mean, they did it with offensive play from the Linoon at first, but then Chansey was too much for what was left of the Girafarig to overcome. Superior really showing its worth here, absolutely sweeping aside the bulky Chansey Shuckle mode. The set is now even. We're going to Game 3. Will the Linoon come back despite the threat of Haze Aurorus? Let's see. Superior's character arc is complete, but the story's not over just yet. Zapdos and Superior leading against Linoon and Tangela. I do think Linoon and Tangela are harder for these two to deal with, but let's see what they've got. Tangela will Rage Powder and get taunted by Superior, but that's all the cover Linoon needs to get a Belly Drum. Zapdos hits Tailwind, though, and Tangela can't Rage Powder again, plus it doesn't work on Superior anyway, so the problem is Linoon can just hit something with extreme speed before an attack comes out, so we'll see. Then the opponent can target it with something. We'll see what the Toxic do here. They could also protect Linoon. Oh, Riolu gets Follow Me. Riolu doesn't get coaching in this generation because it doesn't exist, but it gets Follow Me. They brought 2 redirectors. They can just protect Linoon this turn and then have Follow Me next turn. But no, they don't protect Linoon. They Extreme Speed Superior. I guess they were too afraid of Superior. They could not leave that Pokemon on the field. They could have protected Linoon there, but Superior was just too scary. Had to be gotten rid of immediately. That's my headcanon for what just happened there. Anyway, it's gone. Linoon gets Sky Dropped. Interesting. Metagross will come in. Mega Evolve. We see the Follow Me from Riolu, but of course the Sky Drop will damage Linoon anyway. Could you imagine? We did see Chansey dodging Sky Drops after having already been picked up last week. Could you imagine if Sky Drop picked up a Pokemon and carried it into the sky, and then a Follow Me the next turn caused the Sky Drop damage to go into the Follow Me user instead of the Pokemon that was already picked up? I mean, at this point, there's not much in terms of Sky Drop interactions that would surprise me. Maybe they could have programmed it that way, and it would make as much sense as this move generally does, but that is not what happens. Linoon takes the Sky Drop damage, and an Iron Head knocks Riolu down to a Focus Sash. But Linoon Shadow Claw one-shots Mega Metagross. Linoon is not that strong. I wouldn't have assumed that even at +6, his Shadow Claw would one-shot a Mega Metagross, so pretty good calc there for the Toxic. I wouldn't have known for sure before seeing that with my own eyes. It would do a lot, obviously. But non-stab, +6 Linoon is still Linoon. But I guess the +6 part was more important. Anyway, Latios is here. Linoon looks like it's going to be hard to stop now. I mean, it can just... Well, it protects this turn. Avoids the Psychic. And a Thunderbolt. But I mean, it can just Extreme Speed Latios, right? We see Follow Me. We see Extreme Speed into Latios. It KOs. Riolu, thanks to the Focus Sash, hanging on long enough that it'll redirect one more hit. Linoon still not knocked out by the Zapdos this turn. Now Zapdos is all alone, and Tangle is back with the Rage Powder. But there's not even any need as the Extreme Speed KOs the Zapdos. Honestly, that Linoon was hitting harder this week than I realized it could. +6 attack is +6 attack, I guess, even if a Linoon is a Linoon. And yeah, the more passive mode in Game 2 did not work at all into the contrary Superior setup. Superior's character arc has reached a reasonably satisfying conclusion, I would say. But the Toxic do ultimately take this one, as Linoon plus Redirection is just too much for their opponent to deal with. The Girafarig did bring out a strong offensive team, but when they ran into stronger offense, they kind of fell apart. And yes, the Toxic win. Next we get Pendragon United taking on Bois. They're taking on Bois. Entei, Mamoswine, Aegislash, Salamence, Gallade. I think that's all the Pokemon I listed that they've been using as offensive carries more often than Togekiss. So, as if to justify the trade, they brought those 5 in Clefairy. On the Bois side, it's Trick Room stuff again. They got Trevenant, Rhyperior, Escavalier, and then they've also got the usual Agents of Chaos, Ditto, Arcanine, and Greninja. I feel like they've been spamming these Pokemon pretty often. We could see a Trick Room mode. We could see Greninja Chaos mode. We could see Ditto do something funny. I think all those are on the table, but let's see what we got. Clefairy leads with Entei against Greninja and Trevenant. We see Eviolite Clefairy, unsurprisingly, and Choice Specs Entei. Alright, is it just going to click a big Eruption? Let's see. Trevenant switches out, perhaps afraid of the Eruption. 2 Fire Resists on the field now for Bois. Greninja's protecting. Not a Fire Resist anymore, but it's still safe. Clefairy goes for Follow Me, and it is Specs Eruption from Entei. It does like a quarter to Rhyperior. That feels respectable into a Rhyperior. Clefairy will switch out now for Salamence and Intimidate Rhyperior and Greninja. We have seen physical Greninja pretty often throughout the season, so the Intimidate could matter into both, but maybe not as Greninja goes for Scald into Entei. Outspeeds is a ton of damage. That Eruption is going to be very weak now. Yeah, that really didn't do much. That did 0 to 5% to Rhyperior, so once again, oh, it says 0.1 in the log, so I guess we have figured out that it did damage. But it wasn't much. Rhyperior gets a pretty easy Rock Slide to knock out Entei and do a lot to Salamence, even at -1. Clefairy's here now, though. It'll have that Friend Guard available for Salamence. Salamence will Mega Evolve. Clefairy gives it some more cover with Follow Me, redirects an Ice Beam, gets Crit, which is pretty significant potentially because it took more than half from the crit. Salamence Outrage crits the Rhyperior. I mean, if Rhyperior is going for Rock Slide, then Salamence could have been in trouble there. So, and Rhyperior is a physically bulky Pokemon. That crit feels like it might have mattered. It feels more important than the Ice Beam crit, actually, but I don't know. Crits both ways that could make a real difference. Fair is fair, I guess. Rhyperior is gone. Not so fair to that Pokemon. Arcanine's here. It'll intimidate Salamence. That'll weaken the Outrage. Clefairy going for a Follow Me, redirecting an Ice Beam. Still surviving. But yeah, the -1 Outrage. Salamence, of course, locked into that move because of the inherent properties of Outrage. Not because of a choice item. It's Mega, but Outrage just works like that. Hits Arcanine for less than half, out -1. An Arcanine Heat Wave knocks out Clefairy. Salamence a little bit weaker, but it's still here. We see Aegislash come in. Probably not the Pokemon that they want in front of Greninja and Arcanine. Greninja will protect here. Salamence Outrage just not doing enough damage to Arcanine. That one actually did a lot. It did quite a bit more than the previous one. So low roll into high roll maybe. Or at least one of those is probably true. But Arcanine's still surviving at something resembling 1 HP, but it's not 0. And it gets a Citrus Berry from there. Salamence now confused by its own Outrage. Arcanine not throwing off a Heat Wave. And not throwing off a single target move to cover for Wide Guard. It's Snarl instead. Salamence actually will survive that. I guess that makes sense because Aegislash is so bulky in shield form. It's going to take a Heat Wave anyway, but a lot of Aegislash are special attackers. We don't know for sure about this set this week. It does make sense into the Rhyperior Arcanine Trevenant team that it could be a special attacker, so lowering its special attack could be pretty strong here. We'll find out in a second. Yep, it's Shadow Ball. It does, I was going to say it does knock out Arcanine. That did a lot of not very little damage. The damage that did was very little. I'm a lot surprised at how little that was. Arcanine survives. Does take the special defense drop. Welcome to Pool B commentary. Aegislash showing leftovers. And then going back in shield form with King's Shield. Avoiding a Scald from Greninja. What does Arcanine go for? Well, Salamence will go next, actually. It'll set Tailwind. Breaking through the confusion, but not trying to damage anything. Instead, trying to set up for something else. But it'll get knocked out by an Arcanine Heat Wave here. And Aegislash, still slower than Greninja, gets chipped down by Scald, but it is still in shield form, so it takes that reasonably well, and it gets to outspeed Arcanine and knock that out with a Shadow Ball. And Trevenant will come in now. The tricky thing is there are only 2 turns of Tailwind left, and Aegislash is still slower than Greninja, so does it have to... Can it take a Scald reasonably well here, or does it have to King's Shield and then Shadow Ball Trevenant, and I don't know, hope that Trevenant doesn't have Protect? That seems pretty shaky. I don't know what the better approach is. They might have calced for it. I certainly haven't. Aegislash does King's Shield here, though, so it goes back into shield form. It can better take a Dark Pulse next turn, but Greninja... Not a Dark Pulse, a Scald. But Greninja showing why it doesn't have Dark Pulse, as it uses Fling into Trevenant with a Lychee Berry. And this is very like what we saw the Marshadows do in Pool A. This time it's the attack boosting berry. Trevenant not that bothered about a speed boost. But it's exactly the same attack. Fling with a berry into a dark weak Pokemon. Activate a weakness policy, get +2 attack and +2 special attack, but I doubt Trevenant cares about that. And then the extra point in attack with the Lychee Berry as well. And Trevenant says Trick Room. So Aegislash did make the passive play going for King's Shield to keep itself safe this turn, but Bois perfectly capitalized on that. Setting up Trick Room in front of the opponent's Tailwind, giving their Trevenant the boost it needs to break through this shield form Aegislash. And Aegislash just went for King's Shield. It can go for a double. That probably is its best play. But we'll see if that works out. Doesn't go for it. And drops to a Shadow Claw. Trevenant. Trevenant has lower base speed than Aegislash, so it was probably just doomed anyway. Maybe that's why they didn't go for the double King's Shield, because it wouldn't have saved him. But, yeah, Trevenant closing this one out with a tech that I've never thought about with Trevenant in my draft. Maybe I should be thinking about it. We'll see if Pendragon United can find some adjustments in Game 2. The Specs Entei really didn't accomplish very much in Game 1. I don't know if we'll see that again, but... yeah, maybe we'll see some other offensive threats. Maybe Mamoswine or Gallade will appear in this game. Sure enough, Gallade leads with Clefairy against Escavalier and Arcanine. Escavalier's presence suggests it's probably Trick Room stuff for Bois again, but with Arcanine here, maybe it's like last game where it's Trick Room, but it's not full hard Trick Room. The Intimidate will weaken Gallade, of course. We saw its physical Salamence. The Intimidate being strong into both Pendragon United's Megas is pretty significant here. Clefairy switches straight out for Aegislash, as Gallade will Mega Evolve and Drain Punch Escavalier, does like 30% maybe. Gallade avoids a Heat Wave, however Aegislash not so lucky, and we see that it takes more than half through the Shield form bulk. So yeah, not a threat to KO, but it does do a lot, as Iron Head does similar damage to Gallade. Another Drain Punch into Escavalier, still not doing much damage, but it does give Gallade some recovery, but Arcanine's still free to click that Heat Wave. Knocks out Aegislash, and the double up into Gallade with Iron Head knocks that out. So I'm not sure what Pendragon United were cooking here, but it does not work out at all. These two Pokemon just sweep their leads aside, and maybe things will become clearer when we see what they have in the back. Well, we know this Clefairy. The last Pokemon will maybe reveal why they weren't switching anything in front of these two. But it looks like it must have been just a really rough lead position for them. Okay, Entei is the last Pokemon. I mean, Entei could have come in on Heat Wave and Iron Head, but I can see why they wouldn't want it taking damage. Let's see what it can do here. Helping Hand into Heat Wave on Entei, not going for the Eruption as soon as Entei starts taking damage. Eruption is just not that good anymore. And Arcanine has shown only special attacks so far, but I don't think we've seen all of its moves. I think it could have Extreme Speed. I might be mistaken. Maybe we have seen all of them. But yeah, that could weaken Eruption at least a little bit, even in this position. But Heat Wave is safer over the rest of the full game, which is what they were actually thinking. I don't think Extreme Speed is that big a deal here. It does cook Escavalier, but now Arcanine's free to click Snarl. Maybe this is why Entei was not switching in, because Arcanine could just weaken it with Snarl, and it could come in and take the Heat Waves, but then it wouldn't accomplish a whole lot from there. Ditto will come in, but it's on the other slot, so it transforms into Clefairy and not Entei. But that actually just means that it gives Arcanine Friend Guard and Helping Hand, so that is going to speed things up actually for Bois. That is a totally reasonable use of the Ditto there. Heat Wave, yeah, chips Arcanine. It does some okay damage to Arcanine, all things considered, but it's not the damage they need. And yeah, I mean, the Friend Guard makes a real difference there. It does a lot to Ditto, though, so the Friend Guard won't be around much longer, but Arcanine eats his Citrus Berry, just goes for a Snarl. Still weakening that. Is Friend Guard even making that big a difference, or was it just the -1 special attack? Well, I guess the combination of the two cut that damage quite a lot. But yeah, that Entei's damage still weakened. Arcanine can sit on the field for a long time now. It's not doing a ton of damage back very quickly, but I mean, Entei just has to hope that it crits Arcanine, I guess. I don't see how. They're missing the Heat Waves into the two Fairies, so that's kind of funny. That's going to drag things out a little bit more as the Friend Guards stick around, but yeah, they're just going to trade Heat Waves back and forth, but this position pretty clearly favors Arcanine so far. This is definitely not something I would... Of all the weird techs this season, this is definitely not something I thought I would see. Double Clefairy, Helping Hand, Heat Wave, back and forth from early gen fire type quadrupedal mammals, let's say. Ditto, though, is knocked out by that Heat Wave, but the Snarls just keep weakening this Entei. Actually, Arcanine is taking a lot of damage. Arcanine is not standing up as well into the Heat Waves as I thought it might, but I mean, Greninja should be able to close this one out anyway. This was a closer Heat Wave battle than it seemed like it should be. Clefairy will redirect to Scald. I mean, it doesn't take much from that, but Arcanine taking that Heat Wave pretty well after all those Snarl drops. Heat Waving back. Follow Me from Clefairy. Redirects the Scald from Greninja, but it's knocked out. And Arcanine narrowly takes one more Heat Wave. Entei actually almost got there, but Arcanine survives that one at approximately 1 HP. And this Heat Wave crits, which I don't even think was necessary at this point, especially with that being a single target Heat Wave. I don't think that crit mattered. Greninja also would have won anyway, but it gets the KO. What happened? Oh, Entei crit Arcanine earlier. I think I might have zoned out a little bit, but no wonder the Heat Wave battle was as close as it was. But Arcanine narrowly pulled through. Bois take the 2-0 win, and a little bit of foreshadowing. I don't think this is what foreshadowing is, but if you watched Monday's video, you know that it was also a 2-0 win for the Halifax Masquerade Men, and we remain tied with Bois in the standings. What's going to be done about that? There has to be a playoff bracket with everyone in a specific seed. Well, anyway, we move on now to Genie Incarnate taking on the Toronto Tynamos. Genie Incarnate have brought both of their Megas. They have the Bronzong Camera Up stuff available. They also have the faster Gengar stuff available. They also have Dewgong. It was not actually Perish Trap with Dewgong last week with Dewgong and Mega Gengar, but it could be this week, or it could be some other Dewgong set again. And then Crocodile and Manshower here. Makes sense to me. They could cause a lot of trouble into the Sun mode from the other side, right? They could both throw rock attacks at Charizard and whatnot. On the Tynamos side, we see both Cofagrigus and Exeggutor, so there could be a Trick Room game plan, which would most likely be centered on Sylveon. But I also think, considering that Genie Incarnate have Camerupt and Bronzong, they have a kind of more threatening Trick Room mode here. I could see Cofagrigus being here to reverse or try to shut down Trick Room, and Exeggutor being here to benefit from Chlorophyll next to Mega Charizard Y. I think that's a bit more likely. Sylveon's still strong. It can threaten things like Crocodile and Mienshao. And then they do have that Mega Charizard Y along with Double Dragon, Garchomp, and Latias, able to threaten Camerupt certainly, able to threaten Gengar maybe, depending on some of the details of everyone's sets. Gengar's naturally faster than these Pokemon, but you know, there could be like a Choice Scarf thrown in there or something. But that actually means Dewgong could be pretty significant this week, right? Because Dewgong is strong into Double Dragon. And in a way, it's strong into Mega Charizard Y as well. I think it gets Thick Fat, so it could be one of their best answers to Fire Spam. So I could actually see Dewgong putting in a lot of work this week, but let's see. The Exeggutor could be trouble for Dewgong. Anyway, Mienshao and Bronzong leading against Cofagrigus and Garchomp. Mienshao fake out goes into the Garchomp and crits. Cofagrigus hater in the chat, not happy to see a Cofagrigus on the field. But I think we're probably about to see a Cofagrigus try to stop Trick Room or reverse it or something. Garchomp will flinch first. And yeah, it's imprisoned Trick Room Cofagrigus. But Bronzong not falling for that, just throws a super effective Hidden Power into Garchomp. This is actually the first time this week that we're playing Guess the Hidden Power, and surely it's Ice. But Bronzong's not very offensively strong, so Garchomp survives that, only for Mienshao to show Dual Chop and knock Garchomp out with that. Shadow Ball into Bronzong doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but Cofagrigus taking a Psychic just perfectly well. Still here, shutting down Trick Room options. Charizard will come in and Bronzong will switch out. Can't click Trick Room here. The Hidden Power Ice is not doing much here. I don't know what else Bronzong might have. Dewgong will come in. Dewgong again. Probably one of their best options to take something like a Heat Wave from Charizard. Type-wise, it's neutral, but it does have that Thick Fat, probably. I would assume they're running Thick Fat this week. Charizard Mega Evolves, sets up the Sun. We see Ally switch from Cofagrigus, but Mienshao doesn't care about that. It just goes for Rock Slide. Good week for coverage around the league, as we saw the Shadow Claw Dual Chop Mega Blaziken, and now we get Dual Chop Rock Slide Mienshao. Just wipes out the Charizard with the Rock Slide. Ally switch accomplishing nothing. Now Latias is here. Mienshao will detect. Dewgong takes a Psychic really well. Throws off an Icy Wind, gets some speed control on the Latias, and what did I say? Dewgong putting work into the Dragon types. Looks like it's going to pay off here. Is that Assault Vest Dewgong? That's taking... I mean, it's Cofagrigus. It's not that strong. Latias is pretty strong. Dewgong took very little from a special attack double up there. I also think I might have seen in the Discord that it's Assault Vest Dewgong and forgotten, but all the more reason to think right now that it's Assault Vest Dewgong, that I think I might have seen a message that said that. Dual Chop now into Cofagrigus. It'll give Mummy to Mienshao, removing Inner Focus. Not a ton of damage, but it's some chip. We see Citrus Berry, though, on the Cofagrigus. Cofagrigus definitely built to sit on the field for a long while, imprisoning that Trick Room. And it'll knock out Mienshao, no, Latias will, with a Psychic, before surviving an Ice Beam from Dewgong. Cofagrigus actually setting the Trick Room itself here is interesting. There's still an unrevealed Pokemon for Genie Incarnate, so they better hope it's not Mega Camerupt, which it is. Okay, Camerupt Mega Evolves. Cofagrigus actually slower than regular Camerupt. This is the turn at Mega Evolve, so it doesn't get the speed drop yet. Let's not overreact to that. We know it's not Iron Ball Cofagrigus because we saw the Citrus Berry. This is just another non-dynamic speed situation. Shadow Ball goes into Dewgong, though, does very little damage, gets the special defense drop, that'll offset the Assault Vest, and then Camerupt just knocks out both targets with Eruption. Latias doesn't get to do anything this turn, its own partner's Trick Room sabotaging it, and those were the only two Pokemon that Tynamos had left, so Mega Camerupt just closes this one out. Cofagrigus spent so much time denying Trick Room, only to end up setting Trick Room itself with a fast teammate on the field, and Mega Camerupt took full advantage, also clicking Eruption in the Sun that Charizard Y had set up. So Interesting lineup for the Toronto Tynamos. I've been pretty open about really liking their draft all through the season. They have a lot of interesting combinations they can throw at opponents, but they kind of sabotaged themselves here, setting up 2 different field effects that their opponent benefited from as soon as Mega Camerupt hit the field. But let's see if anything like that happens again in Game 2. As we see Manshadow leading with Gengar against Charizard and Garchomp. Charizard will Mega Evolve immediately once again and drop to a Rock Slide. That's all Mega Charizard Y has gotten to do this set so far. Set Sun and get knocked out by Rock Slide. Gengar just going straight for a substitute, and Garchomp not Earthquaking, not, I don't know, dual chopping. I don't know why it would do that, but it would be nice to substitute Gengar that they didn't know their opponent would bring. Goes for Roar and forces Manshadow out, so Gengar gets to sit here behind that substitute. Dewgong's on the field now, so is Exeggutor. Exeggutor in Sun, so it can benefit from the Chlorophyll. Yeah, Roar is useful for a few things, apart from just being sick. I mean, Roar, as I've said before, is a good way to deny... Well, it's a usable way to deny Trick Room, because Roar is negative priority. In fact, it has, I think, the 2nd lowest priority in the whole game, but the lowest in the game is Trick Room, so you can force something out with Roar before it can set Trick Room. But I feel like if they're bringing Imprison Cofagrigus, then Roar Garchomp is not just also a way to deny Trick Room. They have something else in mind for that. Does Genie Incarnate have some setup mode that I'm forgetting right now? I don't know, probably. Anyway, Dewgong and Exeggutor. Exeggutor probably has Chlorophyll to benefit from the Sun, but it misses a Sleep Powder into Dewgong. That's unfortunate for the Tynamos. Of course, they couldn't Sleep Powder Gengar because of the substitute, so good heads-up play setting that up by Genie Incarnate. And after dodging a Sleep Powder, they crit Exeggutor with a Shadow Ball for good measure, and Exeggutor's gone. And then Ice Beam into Garchomp knocks that out. And the Tynamos already down to just 1 more Pokemon, and it's Latias against Substitute Gengar and Assault Vest Dewgong. Latias will set Tailwind, and then it takes a Shadow Ball at low HP, and that just gives the last KO to Dewgong. Latias is gone. That was a quick one. The Sleep Powder dodge and the crit were, on the same turn no less, were pretty hard for the Tynamos to overcome, but the Substitute Mega Gengar gave itself a favorable... Of course, I guess if Sleep Powder missed into Mega Gengar, you end up with kind of the same situation, but it gave itself a favorable position that would have been hard for the Tynamos to deal with anyway. And so Genie Incarnate sweep the opponent aside and take a 2-0 win. And with the Toxic winning this week, they were the top team out of the playoffs, and the Tynamos were the bottom team in the playoffs, so... could be some trouble for the Tynamos with this result, but we'll see when the final bracket comes together. I say as if I haven't already seen the final bracket. Well, anyway, last set of the week, last set of the regular season, we have the Elegancy taking on the undefeated Ontario Oguris. And this looks like a mismatch just at preview. The Elegancy have all these cute and quirky little Pokemon. Pokemon like Trapinch, Mawile, even Dusclops that kind of just seem like little guys. Sigilif is just a weird looking thing. I really like Sigilif's design, but it doesn't inspire the kind of confidence in battle that an entire legendary trio and Blaziken do. The Oguris just have the more powerful looking team, just off of vibes at preview is what I'm saying. There's a lot of small, round, slow stuff on the Elegancy side, but yeah, it does look like probably a Trick Room mode from the Elegancy. With the Slowbro, Dusclops, they can trap things with Trapinch. What is that for? Bisharp, which isn't here, but could have been. Do these Pokemon get Gravity? I think Dusclops and Sigilif get Gravity. I'm sure at least one of them does. So actually, maybe they're trying to trap even the 3 flying types. Like trapping Thundurus. Trapping Thundurus could be really good actually for Mega Mawile and Slowbro. But they have that Trick Room option. Sigilif could also give them a Tailwind option with the Mega Mawile. It's a little bit tricky into the Oguris Tailwind option. Right? Tornadus Miguel is, I think, pretty hard for Sigilif Mawile to deal with. But they could do something. And then the Heat Rotom is interesting because it can threaten Tornadus and it can threaten Jellicent, which is here. And it resists the fairy attacks from Mega Gardevoir. And it has Levitate, so it's immune to Landorus Earthquake. Thundurus might actually... And it can burn Landorus as well. Thundurus might actually be the biggest threat to the Rotom because it has that Volt Absorb to avoid. electric type damage, but I almost missed that. Heat Rotom actually looks like it could go crazy here. The Earthquake immunity is huge. For the Oguris, I think these Pokemon for the most part need no introduction. The Bisharp is not here, but it is that Landorus, Mega Gardevoir offense. Blaziken, I guess, gives him something interesting to throw at Mega Mawile. I don't know. It's the last set of the week. Let's just jump in and see. We've got Slowbro and Rotom leading against Miguel and Tornadus. Intimidating to these two, they don't care. Tornadus goes for... Oh, what did I say? Rotom looks like it puts in a lot of work into this Oguris team. The Earthquake immunity from Levitate is huge. And what happens turn 1? Tornadus immediately clicks Smackdown into Rotom. Physical Rock type attack. Not going to do a whole lot, even from a Tornadus, even into this weakness. We also see Chardy Berry on the Rotom, so that'll protect it from the rock weakness this turn. But Smackdown also knocks its target down to the ground, causing it to be grounded, which means Miguel is free to Earthquake this Rotom with its double ground weakness now. And it's actually not Earthquake, it's Earth Power, it's special Miguel. Okay, didn't see that coming. Earthquake wouldn't have done too much to Slowbro anyway, I would think, but yeah, they focused everything on just getting rid of Rotom. I mean, the Pokemon did look like a threat, but now Slowbro is free to set Trick Room if it wants. Life Orb special Miguel. They want this to be Incarnate Landorus, but unfortunately they don't have that in their draft. But they brought the set anyway. Slowbro does set Trick Room, and now Mawile's here. It'll intimidate these two, but I'm not sure that matters. Tornadus switches out to Blaziken. Mawile Mega Evolves. Scald into Miguel. Miguel survives at approximately 1 HP. And Mawile just goes for Sword Stance, and Earth Power knocks out Mawile. Alright, so that Scald survival was pretty big. Even getting burned wouldn't matter there because it's special Miguel. Pretty good reason, I guess, to go special right there. Miguel will drop for the Life Orb damage, but knocking out Rotom and Mawile is a lot of work, especially with Mawile being the most obvious offensive threat for the Elegancy in this matchup. Let's see now if the Oguris can close this out. Sigilyph is the last Pokemon for the Elegancy. We see Thundurus. Well, it's the last one. They have Tornadus in the back still, but Thundurus is the last one that they brought. For the Oguris, 3 more turns of Trick Room. Scald into Thundurus does not a ton of damage. It does get the burn, but Thundurus is surely special. And Sigilyph knocks it out with an Air Slash? Sigilyph Air Slash did more than Slowbro Scald into Thundurus? What happened there? I feel like, I mean, Sigilyph hits reasonably hard, but like I don't think it's a crazy strong Pokemon. I think Slowbro hits reasonably hard too. The base power is pretty similar. I guess Sigilyph is just trained to be way more offensive than Slowbro. That makes sense, but I'm surprised that Air Slash did that much into a legendary electric type. But okay, Thundurus is gone. Blaze Kick from Blaziken does a good chunk of damage to Sigilyph, a little bit more than half. And now we see Tornadus come back in. Trick Room's still up. Blaziken will protect around a Scald. Air Slash doing a bunch to Tornadus and getting the flinch. I don't know what Tornadus went for, so I don't know how much that matters. Who am I kidding? It's the Oguris. Tornadus went for Skydrop into Slowbro, and Blaziken will have a much harder time getting through the next turn. Well, it probably gets knocked out by an Air Slash anyway, but Air Slash can miss. Maybe Tornadus went for Skydrop into Sigilyph, but Tornadus went for Skydrop there, and the fact that it doesn't get to do that is going to make it harder for them to get through the last turn of Trick Room. That's definitely what happened there. I don't have inside information, but there's no way that's not what happened there with these teams in Week 8 of this season. Scald into Blaziken does actually just knock it out, so Skydrop would have been hard-pressed to save it, as Air Slash does connect into Tornadus and knock it out, and the Ontario Oguris have, after a really strong start with Miguel clicking out Earth Power, kind of fallen apart after that, just folded against Slowbro and Sigilyph in Trick Room and lost Game 1. And let's see if they can bounce back in Game 2. All those weird-looking Pokemon for the Elegancy. Yeah, it turns out they could actually put in a lot of work. That Sigilyph was... I'm still kind of amazed at how hard that Sigilyph was hitting. And it avoided getting Skydropped, but let's see if it can do that again in Game 2. We see Sigilyph and Slowbro against Gardevoir and Jellicent. Gardevoir will Mega Evolve. Jellicent going straight for a Water Spout. Maybe this is that Specs or Scarf Jellicent that some of the coaches like to use. It does a lot to Sigilyph, not a lot to Slowbro. And Gardevoir goes from Prison, so I'm guessing it's Trick Room Gardevoir, stopping Slowbro from setting Trick Room here. I feel like Hyper Voice might have been better, though, to get rid of the Sigilyph, but maybe I'm just vicariously afraid of Sigilif because it did so much to them in game 1. Maybe it's not worth getting rid of it. Maybe getting rid of it is not that worthwhile compared to stopping the Trick Room, especially if this is Scarf Jellicent. Slowbro, though, just... Or not Slowbro, Sigilif just goes straight for Psyshock and knocks out Gardevoir. Okay, Sigilif gets Tinted Lens, so... I'm sure this one has it. So that's effectively neutral Psyshock. Tinted Lens effectively cancels resistances. But still, that's just one-shot Mega Guard. What is this Sigilif been eating? Is it Specs? Did it click anything other than Air Slash in game 1? That's the answer, right? It's Specs Sigilif. And I'm slow on the uptake. I had other ideas about what Pokemon were getting in the thumbnail. I mean, Superior already got a thumbnail this season. I'm a big Superior fan, but I don't know if I'm rigging things that much. Dugong made a good case for the thumbnail, but I think it might have to be Sigilif, depending on how the rest of this goes. Scald into Jellicent. Jellicent does not have Water Absorb, so it does take damage from that, but not much. We see Water Spout now take out the Sigilif and do some damage to Slowbro. Thunderous Volt Switch will finish Slowbro off and pivot Miguel in. And now we get Mawile and Rotom, so it's the same Pokemon for the Elegancy as Game 1. They just flipped the order. Smackdown Tornadus not on the field this time, but Jellicent can just Water Spout the Rotom probably, except maybe Mawile can Sucker Punch it. Mawile will Mega Evolve. No Sucker Punch, it protects. Jellicent just going for another Water Spout. I'm sure that's choiced. Rotom surviving at approximately 6 or 7% HP. And Mawile avoids an Earth Power, so Rotom is able to click a Volt Switch into Jellicent. I mean, that Water Spout is getting weakened as Jellicent takes damage. It'll be pretty significantly weakened now, but of course Rotom is unable to switch out because there's nothing in the back to bring it in. The Volt Switch does not switch it, and it's disabled by Jellicent's Cursed Body. We already saw that it was not Water Absorb Jellicent. And so Water Spout will knock out Rotom here, but it doesn't do a whole lot to Mawile when it's so weakened, but Earth Power from Miguel does plenty to knock Mawile out. And so these two teams are just trading blows so far. The Sigilif is going to be going crazy, but the Water Spout Jellicent was able to overpower it. I mean, after it one-shot Mega Gardevoir, the Water Spout Jellicent was able to overpower it in this game. So let's see what adjustments the Elegancy throw at their opponent in Game 3. Maybe we'll see the Trick Room go back up. The Gardevoir did not do a very good job of stopping it in Game 2, but it didn't go up anyway. But maybe we will see it this time. Let's find out together. Slowbro and Sigilif once again against Gardevoir and Miguel. Gardevoir Mega Evolves. Miguel just U-turns out into Slowbro. Doesn't do a ton of damage, and we see... Oh, it's Life Orb, right. It's not Rocky Helmet Slowbro. It's Life Orb Miguel. Also, that U-turn... It's Special Miguel, so that U-turn probably would have done more if it were a physical set. I mean, I don't know the EVs, right? It could be heavily invested in both Special Attack and Physical Attack, but I doubt it. Anyway, Jellicent will pivot in here. What if Sigilif Psyshocks the Jellicent and it KOs? I mean, I think that would be the peak moment of the week. If Sigilif just Psyshocks the Jellicent, switching in, and it KOs. I don't know if the Oguris could come back from that. Gardevoir in prison. Sigilif goes for Synchronoise. Synchronoise is a spread move? No, I didn't know all these years how Synchronoise works. I know this much. Synchronoise is a Psychic type attack that does damage only to Pokemon that share types with the user. That's why Jellicent was immune there. Sigilif is a Psychic and Flying type, slightly awkwardly for the Elegancy. It hits his partner, which is also a Psychic type, and it just wipes out Slowbro. Slowbro taking U-turn damage already, but still, the Sigilif is doing just unreal damage. It's got to be Specs Sigilif, so it's not now it's locked into Synchronoise, right? Wait, that's so good. Wait, the Oguris have 3 Flying types and a Psychic type that they bring like every week. The fact that they drafted a whole legendary trio is weaponized against them here, as this Sigilif is doing crazy damage to every target. Synchronoise does spread damage. That part I've just learned right now. I don't think I ever knew that about that move. It's a Gen 5 move. I don't think in 15, 16 years I ever knew that Synchronoise is a spread move. but that would just shred the whole flying type legendary trio and the Mega Gardevoir. That's a crazy attack. Jellicent's immune though, because it's not a psychic type and it's not a flying type. Also, Gardevoir took this way better than it took the single target Psyshock, which of course also targets this weaker, I think, defensive stat. So the only KO that Sigilyph got here was on its partner Slowbro, but I mean, what are the Oguris going to do about that now? There we go. I said something better here in the. I said a more concise version here in the chat. You know that's me because it's the username says so. Anyway, Mawile's here, and Mega Evolved. Is it going to be Sucker Punch Mawile? We didn't see that last game, but this would be a good time to Sucker Punch Jellicent, which, by the way, is receiving a Helping Hand from Gardevoir. This is Imprison, Helping Hand, presumably Trick Room, Gardevoir. It has mostly status moves. You would think it's probably pretty bulky. Maybe not. Maybe it's just like all offense for the Hyper Voice in the 4th move slot or something. And just getting wiped out by Psyshock. Through Tinted Lens, sure, but it's going to give a Helping Hand to the Water Spout Jellicent. Or to the Scald Jellicent. They were afraid of Sucker Punch there, weren't they? Water Spout did so much damage to Sigilyph in Game 1. Does Water Spout just take 2 KOs here with the Helping Hand boost? We're not going to know because they didn't click Water Spout. And I'm guessing the reason they didn't click Water Spout is that they thought Mawile would Sucker Punch Jellicent. So, playing a little carefully there seems to be backfiring on the Oguris. Both these Pokemon are still here. Sigilyph gets to go for that Synchronoise again. Jellicent is immune, but so is Mawile. It does not KO Gardevoir. Gardevoir survives at approximately 1 HP. Of course, Gardevoir has already used this action for this turn on the Helping Hand. It will not do any damage back. Mawile goes for an Iron Head into Jellicent. It's resisted. You wouldn't know it's resisted from the fact that it did about 50% to a pretty bulky Pokemon, but Jellicent does survive that. It would be very funny if Mawile shows the Sucker Punch finally next turn. Let's see. It can't use Iron Head again because it just got disabled. Sigilyph switches out to Dusclops. We see Scarf on the Jellicent, but we kind of figured that one out already. Scald into Mawile, no burn, and not great damage either. Gardevoir shows that its last move is Psychic. That's the attack. No Hyper Voice. Well, I mean, they have some Fairy Resists. I guess I can kind of understand, but well, they have some Psychic Resists too. Actually, they have more of those in this lineup at least, but no Hyper Voice. Psychic into Dusclops. The Oguris, one of the scariest offensive teams in the league this season, not doing a whole lot of damage right now with the Scald and the Psychic. Mawile gets to set up a Swords Dance. Now it's Helping Hand again to boost the Scald, but Mawile will protect it. Scald does go into that slot, unsurprisingly. Does Dusclops going to set Trick Room? No, it's just going to Nightshade and knock out Gardevoir. Now Miguel's here. Mawile goes for the double protect and gets it. This game is nuts. Mawile getting a double protect there. Not in Scald range anyway, but of course you don't want to get burned. Also, Mawile's only at +1 attack now after Miguel's Intimidate. Is it Trick Room now? They doubled into Mawile. Makes sense, because you know the Scald doesn't KO. I think the Earth Power KOs anyway, though, right? Like, you just Earth Power and Scald Dusclops? I don't know, but they doubled in... Whether that's true or not, they doubled into Mawile. Mawile protected. No damage from either attack. Dusclops gets a free Trick Room if it wants it. Gardevoir's gone. Gardevoir didn't click Imprison this game anyway, I don't think, but... Oh, it did. Okay, well that's why they weren't setting Trick Room earlier. But now the Trick Room is up. Mawile's at +1. No Sucker Punch, as far as I can tell. We might have seen all of its moves now, actually. I don't remember. But no Sucker Punch, no problem. Nightshade. Doesn't do too much to Jellicent. Jellicent does a lot of HP. Now we've seen all of Mawile's moves. No Sucker Punch. Ice Punch. Takes out Miguel. Yeah, Ice Punch makes sense into this team. Mawile survives a Scald at low HP. And now Jellicent drops to a Nightshade. And Thundurus is one-shot by an Ice Punch. And the Ontario Oguris almost completed an undefeated regular season. It took Game 3 of Week 8, the last week of the season. I was going to say literally the last match of the regular season, but that's not actually true. The last one in Pool A was played after this. I just go pool by pool. But it's just as well that I forgot to flip the order this week, because this was a great one to end on. The Oguris have taken their first loss of the season. They still get the 1 seed, by the way. They still get the 1 seed at the playoffs, but nobody is going into the playoffs undefeated. Just saying, the Halifax Masquerade Men's 7-1 record. Tied for best record there is. And with all this talk of seeding, it would, you would think, be time for me to show the playoff field. That is normally what I do at this part of Week 8, but actually, there is a little bit of unfinished business still to be dealt with before the final bracket is set. All the playoff teams have been determined coming out of this week, but the bracket still a little bit up in the air. For reasons that you'll see in an extra special bonus video tomorrow. That's the end of Week 8. All the matches are in the books, but playoff field revealed soon, along with a special surprise.